podcast. Part of the On3 Network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the After Stangs Show. I am Billy Embody. With me, Dean Ralsky. SMU falls 18-15 to BYU. The Mustangs now 0-5 all time against the Cougars, and this one hurts a little bit more. First Power Conference game as a Power Conference program for SMU at Ford Stadium, and they can't get the job done. And before we get into the game, we've got to remind you guys that we are presented by Mosquito Shield. Trust me, this is one where a lot of people would like to take out their anger. Well, pick the mosquitoes, okay? It's that time of year where you want to have your backyard pristine and perfect. Andrew Galloway and his wife have started a family business a long time ago. They built it into Mosquito Shield, and you can get their best pricing for yourself and your family or friends when you share that we've got the deal here for you guys. When you use the code PONYUP for the best pricing for the remainder of the season, that's through November. You can give them a call at 214-775-0622 or go to moshield.com. They spray at least twice a month, and you also have that free respray guarantee to ensure your yard is mosquito free. And trust me, it's about to be that time of the year where it's going to cool down. You're going to want to sit in your backyard. Well, you're not going to want to sit in the backyard when you've got mosquitoes all over the place. And so SMU fans, head over to an SMU-owned business, Mosquito Shield. Go to moshield.com. Give them a call today for all your mosquito needs. Dean, going into this one, and it's funny, I did a radio hit, and it was pregame, and we actually were on the same page, the BYU radio station that I was on, and just sharing my thoughts. And I said, this is the game that we're going to find out a few things, whether SMU's offensive line is for real. We're going to find out if SMU's defense and defensive line is for real as well. And this is the time where SMU's quarterback competition and battle is going to get a little bit of clarity. Yeah. And tonight, I felt like we learned all three of those things.
Yeah, we did. And we learned, first of all, let's start with the positive. The SMU defense had a phenomenal game. They really did, including that defensive line, but also the secondary, where there have been some question marks at cornerback in the past. We saw CJ Sanders flying around, making tackles. We saw Jahari Rogers breaking up multiple passes, making some nice plays. And then you did see this offensive line struggle against the BYU front seven. And BYU saw that weakness pretty quickly and got pressure to the quarterback often. And so I think BYU found one of the flaws in SMU's offense, and then they attacked it relentlessly throughout the game.
And we're going to have tons of time now that SMU is going into a bye week to break a lot of this down. I mean, we'll have Hayden Howerton on next week. We'll probably have plenty of time to digest this one. And as Rhett Lashley talked after the game, I mean, he's got that pit in his own stomach just from the standpoint of you don't get a short week. You don't get next week. You have to wait 2 weeks against your rival, TCU, to take out what happened and your emotions from tonight, because this was a poor start for the offense once again. You know, Preston Stone in there, 2 drives. I think the first 2 drives, negative 17 yards. His 3 drives tonight, negative 24. So rough night for Preston. He doesn't get pulled. Kevin Jennings goes in there for the 3rd and 4th series, kind of like they had loosely planned to in this game. And Kevin kind of takes off, moves the offense. SMU was able to get some points on the board. They went down inside BYU's territory and turned it over on downs. A pass on 4th down that was just outside the reach of Matthew Hibner. Then the next drive, they get a field goal. They put Preston in. They go back 6 yards. And during that time, the defense stood on its head, quite honestly. Punt after they gave up the touchdown to BYU on its 2nd drive. SMU's defense settled in. But the story tonight is this offense. And I don't know if it's rudderless, because they have a game plan, and they have a very specific just style to them, but it's not getting them anywhere for the most part. I know they got down in the red zone. They had good field position, but I don't know. I just felt like this was the time where the offense showed that there are some real personnel issues.
There are. And to your point, they moved the ball down the field at times. And then you saw on multiple drives where they'd go to this wildcat formation. And it, especially the second time, it just killed the drive, maybe both times too. And you just wonder, they didn't have, again, they got into a rhythm at times, but they just almost didn't feel comfortable at all in the offense. It was a surprise when you saw a 15-yard pass completed downfield. And there were some throughout the game. But then they got to the red zone, and they really just didn't know what to do. You saw interception from Kevin Jennings, the fumble from Brashard Smith. That drive, of course, started at the BYU 3-yard line, and then a holding penalty on Andrew Chambly's first snap in the game. He had to come in when Ja'Kai Clark came out injured. And it just felt like one of those games where SMU, for whatever reason, wasn't meant to win this game. It just wasn't working out for them.
Yeah, you look at the 3 field goal drives for SMU, second quarter, they go 10 plays, 36 yards. They chew up 3 minutes, 26 seconds. Then you have a 9-play, 50-yard drive, 2 minutes, 4 seconds. That one had a little bit of pace to it. 11-play, 24 yards, 4 minutes, 13 seconds. All result in field goals. And you need to score touchdowns to win, as BYU showed. They got 2 critical touchdowns at perfect times to set themselves up to take this game. And I don't know where SMU has to go from here in terms of killer instinct offensively, because I felt like they played pretty hard offensively. They had an ill-advised fumble, stretching it for extra yards. You're in the red zone. They had moments where Kevin would step up and deliver an absolute dime over the middle. Had multiple in routes between Jake Bailey, Keyshawn Smith caught one. But when you needed a big dog play, SMU didn't have it tonight offensively.
No, and in week 0, when they needed a big dog play, they went to RJ Maryland, and he caught a pass maybe on that first drive. He caught a pass for 2 yards, I think, and that was all we saw from him. Yep. And so questions of, whether was he getting open? Were they even looking his way? I'm not sure. But yes, this offense, they struggled throughout. And Coach Sataki talked about in the press conference after the game, he said when SMU didn't convert on that first 4th down, and then they started kicking field goals, he kind of went, okay, SMU's just going to take their points. And so the BYU defense knew, okay, well, SMU's just going to take their points. They're going to take their 3. And Coach Sataki really read the SMU offense. Where on the flip side, BYU did, I believe, miss their first 4th down, but then they converted 2 clutch 4th downs that ultimately, the last one, won them the game.
Yeah, it was a game that when you face a BYU team, they're always more mature, they're older, they are generally a physical football team. And I thought we saw that. I didn't feel like SMU's defense, really obviously showed anything that other than they're going to be something that this team can rely on over the course of the season. And here's why. We saw in the Nevada game when this defense was left out there and drive after drive, the offense was struggling. They were eventually, giving up yardage, and they were giving up those key moments. And that was against a Nevada team that I didn't think had the creativity and just overall kind of depth. I mean, you were talking about it with the running back position, Noah Hine, who scored one of their touchdowns. He's not even on the depth chart. So it's reassuring for SMU's fans to know that this defense can be something, because BYU schemed up some really good stuff, and they had to do some speed option things to even find those yards. So it's an encouraging night for the defense. It's a really, really frustrating night for SMU's offense.
It is, and you almost have to wonder, again, we talked about it in Nevada when Nevada dominated time of possession in that game in week 0, sort of this identity of this offense, and are they going to have to try and change it? Because you saw tonight, when the BYU offense isn't out there for 40 minutes of the game and dominating time of the possession, the SMU defense is fresh. You saw the depth and the talent of this defense shine for really a majority of this game. And then the SMU offense, there weren't as many 3-and-outs maybe as that Nevada game, but when they just don't take as much time off the clock and you're putting that defense back out there against teams in the ACC is stacked at running back. There are countless good running backs in this conference. And so teams will know to try and run the ball and wear out this defense. And so the SMU offense is going to have to try and find a way to, of course, put up points, but also to take some time off the clock on some of these drives.
And that's why this game was shaping up to be such a battle, because when Kevin was in there, they were moving the ball. They weren't, 3 and out, just not doing anything. They were able to take their time and do some different things. And I felt like BYU made some nice adjustments in the second half to kind of slow things down. Kevin Jennings had the offense moving. I mean, 3 straight scoring drives, just came away with field goals for various reasons. You look at the throw to Matthew Hibner where he was getting face guarded, could have been PI. There was a hold, or not a hold. He was kind of on Jake Bailey's back on the scramble. I mean, you can't rely on refs to, bail you out. But there were moments where SMU took ill-advised penalties, and it really hurt them. And then you have moments where they had opportunities to seize the game with a touchdown, and they didn't take them. And it is the same song and dance. But I think when you look at the offense, and then we'll get to some questions here. When you look at the offense now, and this quarterback battle has been something where early in fall camp, we noted it finally. We kind of said, hey, yeah, they've been battling all off season, and people were, felt a certain way on either side. But Kevin has that upside. He has that ability to run. I mean, that hit that he took, I couldn't believe he bounced back from it. They got drilled. He's not fearless in any way to make a mistake. He's always going to be trying to make a play. And it bit him in the ass tonight with that interception. He tries to thread one in there, and it gets picked off. And luckily for SMU, in a sense, they got bailed out the 2 plays later with the fumble or the interception. But you just either – I'm at the point now where I've said this, that the BYU or the TCU game, and I was leaning towards the BYU game, would settle what maybe Rhett Lashley needs to do with this quarterback room. And I hope this answers a lot of questions on the board, because there are a lot on there. People are ticked off. But they need to make a decision and ride with one of them. And I think Kevin Jennings showed tonight he's got the upside. It's going to be a learning experience still for him. But he does have that ice in his veins where, he didn't get opportunities this week to work 2-minute. He didn't get opportunities to work third downs because Preston was a starter. Yeah. And there's just not much of that goes on in major college football. And that's why a backup's a backup. And as talented as Kevin is, he's got to get more opportunities to show what he can do. And I think he flashed enough that with 2 weeks until TCU, real opportunity that he has in front of him if he's named the starter for that game.
Yeah, this offense, as we learned tonight, will take time to grow. We thought maybe it would just be the offensive line because all these receivers are coming back, and maybe these receivers would help whoever's at quarterback or at tight end, or the running game, of course, brought pretty much every running back from last year. And that just hasn't been the case. And so when this offensive line has been struggling, SMU has had to just try to find ways to get yards and move the ball. And again, at times it worked. But once you got to that red zone, the SMU offense struggled. And so I think for Kevin Jennings, to your point, they have to stick with the quarterback. And I think they will now. I think it's too obvious of a problem for Coach Lashley to try and play this 2-quarterback system. We'll have to wait and see. Again, there's 2 weeks until TCU. But not a little bit at a loss for words. Is just where this offense could go.
This offensive line, all right. So let's rewind to camp. And again, I think this will answer some questions too on the board. Garen Justice, you rewind all the way to spring. Branson Hickman and Marcus Bryant leave. 2 veterans, an offensive tackle, which clearly SMU needed just from a talent depth perspective. And Branson Hickman, multi-year starter at center, who unfortunately went down in his first week. I'm not sure if he's back in action or not for OU. They play tomorrow, I guess. But you have 2 veterans that left. And SMU going into the spring felt like they really like what PJ Williams is. And PJ, from an upside perspective, it's there. When he's at his best, he's very, very good. And he's more well-rounded than Marcus. And at the same time, he's developed this problem with having bad holding penalties, once a game in the 2, FBS games that SMU's played in particular. And then at center, you thought, okay, they're going to move the super athletic, smart Justin Osborne to center, and they were kind of pushing their chips in on that. Logan Parr was going to recover, and Ja'Kai Clark was going to be at guard. And that interior on paper I mean, you are you don't even have to be an optimist to think, all right, that's pretty good. Right. I mean, on paper, that is multi-year starters. That's your best offensive lineman in NCAA football. That's a 40-game starter from Miami. That's a 30-plus, however many games Justin Osborne started. And then you went out and got an all-SEC freshman for right tackle to replace Hiron White. And then you had depth along the interior with Bird and Sparks and all sorts of guys. And for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out. And there's critical penalties. There's Andrew Chamblee getting hurt the second day of camp. Like that is a killer. Nate Anderson has to kick out. That doesn't go well. Savion Byrd moves around. It's not a group that's settled by any means. So with all of that has happened, and then J.O. doesn't look like he looked like in camp. And there's time for this offensive line to come together and gel, but there is a very real sense that now you have to at least look at it expectations-wise and say, all right, this is going to be a work in progress. Because physically, look, SMU rushed 5.4 yards per carry with Brashard Smith. Kevin obviously ran it for 4.2. Jalen Knighton, 4.4, and he didn't finish many runs very well. They had something going a little bit in the run game, so it's not like they're getting killed physically. In pass pro, they struggled tonight, and that's where I feel like it ultimately hurt them on those key multiple penalties.
And the talk of the offseason has been, when you join a power conference, you have to address the trenches. And I think what SMU and maybe what all teams that make this jump to the power conference are learning is just throwing bodies at the problem is not necessarily going to work. When you just put a bunch of new faces that, again, on paper, have the talent, have the experience at different schools, you think, okay, this could work out. They've got the talent. But starting week 0 against Nevada and this week again, it's just the offensive line just missing certain assignments. And again, part of that is just because they haven't played enough together.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see how they address it.
I thought the wide receivers, I thought Keyshawn Smith stepped up at some key moments, caught 4 of his 5 targets. But you're also looking at another night where Jordan Hudson has a couple opportunities to make big-time 5-star NFL-type plays, didn't come through. And, you know, this game is obviously so different if he catches that kind of corner route that Kevin kind of threw to him. I think it went through his hands, and then he dropped another one that was kind of tipped. So an interesting opportunity there for him to kind of judge that. But this wide receiver group, I would say outside. I mean, I think Jake Bailey and Roderick Daniels are actually playing good.
Yes,
or they're playing well. You know, they're doing some things. Roderick hasn't really gotten as many pass game opportunities. The jet sweep thing is another thing, but Jake Bailey played pretty well tonight when given opportunities. But the wide receiver group, it's very clear that they don't have somebody who's really stepping up right now, and it's got to change. It's got to change overall.
Yeah, and SMU had success passing the football over the middle of the field, and I think that's why you saw Jake Bailey has some success, Keyshawn Smith as well. But over the top, that taking the top off of the defense, we did not see SMU even attempt it tonight, and part of that could be down to the receivers. Part of that, people were talking about in the press box, could be down to, does Kevin Jennings have that ability to loft a ball and place it right into the breadbasket of the receiver? We, again, yet to see Jennings even attempt that yet, so we don't really know. But SMU, it looks like passing the football, they're just going to have to focus on through the middle of the field, through those slot receivers, Roderick Daniels Jr. and Jake Bailey and whoever else is there. And until then, they're just going to have to rely on Brashard Smith, who did look good again tonight.
Yeah, it's quite the conundrum for Rhett Lashley, because, you know, I think and this is to a broader question point that I think we're learning about this team is one, SMU is doing just fine on defense.
Yep.
You know, there were a couple plays that broke the game a little bit there on offensive drives for BYU, but SMU's defense, I mean, how many turnovers did they end up? 3. Just some big time plays by Elijah Roberts, Kobe Wilson, who after that roughing the passer penalty, which, whatever, he turned it on. He finished with a bunch of tackles, really, really dominant showing by him. Had that interception, was just all over the place. And defensively, you're fine. Colin Rogers, clearly you're fine. 5 field goals, single game SMU record, 53-52, and a couple others there.
38, 28, and maybe a 45-yarder.
45-yarder. So he's in good shape. I thought special teams was really good, unless I'm missing something there. Even BYU had a penalty that SMU normally be the ones taking on the kickoff that gave SMU great field position. But, again, this offense is going to have to be taken kind of back to the drawing board and say, all right, if SMU is going to go with Preston or go with KJ, what does that look like? Obviously, expectations are going to change with whoever they pick, and we'll see what the ride looks like. But there's got to be some fundamental changes with the skill talent that they have, and versus what they try to do offensively. Because Rhett would love to throw the deep ball, run the ball with Brashard Smith, have that balance, keep use RJ Maryland, work the middle of the field. But right now, there's nothing on the outside, receiver wise, to feel good about going deep. So what do they have to do to change some things? The offensive line has to get fixed. And for those that are kind of wondering, like, what's next? I mean, it's still hard to recalibrate expectations. And here's why. Or I shouldn't say it's hard to recalibrate expectations. There is still a lot of season left to play. And I sat there at the beginning of the season and look, I mean, AP poll, coaches poll had SMU ahead of everybody on their schedule, quote unquote, outside of Florida State and Louisville by the rankings and receiving votes and all those things. So I wasn't the only one that was sitting there saying, I think 9-3 is possible. 9-3 is possible if you get strong quarterback play. And I said that. I said, and most people on our message board at On the Pony Express picked up on it. Billy was quietly saying, hey, there's a little bit of concern with the quarterback situation, because there is a quarterback situation. Somebody needs to grab it and be the dude. And if that's Kevin, he showed tonight, I think he's got the upside to do it. And so now, as far as expectations go, you need to sit back and say, okay, defensively, SMU's got a chance to be in every single game.
Absolutely.
And they've got a chance against TCU to hold them to a reasonable number. Against Florida State, they've got a chance to hold them to a reasonable number. Louisville, we'll see. We don't know much about them, but they've got a chance to be high flying. And with Shug back there, kind of a decent matchup. But offensively, are they going to be able to move the ball like they did tonight to keep the defense fresh? And that's where it's a hard conversation to kind of look at and have. But the offense right now is just not finishing drives like it should. And that's what this game came down to.
Right. Because if SMU does, well, they win this game comfortably. Some of these questions, most of these questions go away because you're winning this game maybe 31. Let's say you score 4 out of the 5 field goals, turn them into touchdowns. Okay, you win this game 31-15, you cover, which a lot of people thought the 12.5 point spread or whatever it finished as was pretty heavy towards SMU.
Yeah.
And so that's what's frustrating about this game is SMU's defense played really well. Special teams played really well, and that still wasn't enough to beat a BYU team who give them a lot of credit. They played well, but in terms of who was left on this schedule heading into this game, was one of the weaker Power 4 teams coming into this game.
And it's one of those things where, like, you look at BYU and you look at how physical they are and fit and older and physically imposing and all those things. And it's hard to say, okay, all right, Stanford, SMU, SMU is going to lose to Stanford or whatever. It's a hard comp. We'll know not to kick the can down the road again, but we're going to know really, really how to calibrate expectations for ACC play once SMU faces TCU. Those are two teams that, both miss bowl games, but BYU is always older. They're always more mature. And, they've been a more consistent program lately. I feel like they're making the, second year up in the power conference, but I don't know. I think for SMU, I mean, like you said, this game came down to the red zone and not capitalizing. That doesn't take away from the fact that there are a lot of issues offensively, and SMU moved the ball despite a lot of those issues, which is, a weird thing. It wasn't pretty. It was going to be a rock fight. I told everybody this week to take the under, and it just, BYU's held to 18 points. I had them at 20 in my prediction, and SMU's offense didn't hold up its end of the bargain.
No, and turnovers obviously killed this team, especially the 2 in the red zone. That's where, even if you don't turn the ball over, well, if you take your points when you get into the red zone, SMU finds a way to win this game, and we're talking about, well, they found a way to win. But unfortunately, the turnovers were costly, and you could argue the difference in this game. And so moving forward, you've just got to think there are other teams in the ACC that are dealing with similar issues. I mean, you've got to think about Virginia Tech going on the road against Vanderbilt, and they lose. And they were not the team making the jump into the ACC. They were also a team right there in the thick of that sleeper team in the ACC. And so maybe it says a little bit about the ACC, but SMU now has 2 weeks to really maybe not prove what talent they have on the field. Some fans and analysts may think they know that, but what sort of team this is and the character they have, because there are a lot of seniors and veterans on the team that's been talked about all off season. This is a big moment for SMU to turn the corner and play with a chip on their shoulder the rest of the way.
Let's get to a couple questions here. We'll wrap this up because, again, we've got a bye week, everyone, and it's late, and I don't want to talk about this game much longer. But as far as the overall program, Whiskey Pony has a couple of good questions, and SoCal Pony does at ontheponyexpress.com. We're here at Shug's Bagels, by the way, Mockingbird Plaza. It's popping out there. People are getting their bagels. It's open till 2 a.m. after hours, so check them out. We are presented by Mosquito Shield as well, moshield.com. And we'll hit on some of these questions. Whiskey asks, does this performance finally force Rhett to rip the Band-Aid off and play a true set of starters and not trying and to have co-starters at literally every position on offense? Does he have the stones to truly be a head coach and make tough decisions that will result in some players being unhappy? I think so. I mean, we kind of saw that a little bit after – well, I had heard about it before Houston Christian, but it came to light a little bit more this week. Romello Brinson and Jordan Hudson were on the same side of the field. They're now opposite. They're trying to get them more, but you do rotate players. But I think at the receiver position, something's going to have to happen, because Romello Brinson showed moments why he should be out there. That, by the way, that throw Kevin Jennings had on another holding call to Romello Brinson does not show up on the stat sheet. Money ball, Romello Brinson, big play. They're down, I think, inside the 30, comes back. So the wide receiver position, there's 4 guys on the outside. And we didn't see Moochie Dixon tonight, I don't think. But that's not a bad 3 to be rotated. I mean, you can't go to Ashton Cozart. No offense, Ashton. Like, can't go to some of the younger receivers that are on this roster right now. You just can't. And, I mean, it just kind of is what it is at wide receiver. At offensive line, they're trying to find answers in the game, because that's the only thing they can do right now is plug in guys that are playing well or not and take them out. And, I mean, they're playing now, at least they're all, until injuries hit, they're all playing the same spot that they are. So maybe they settle in. But as far as true sets of starters, the only thing I'm with right now is pick a quarterback and ride and go from there. And I think at this point it should be Kevin Jennings. And to the final point of the question, or one of the points of the question, is, does he have the stones to make tough decisions? I know this is about players, but this is a program that under Rhett went to a bowl game his first year. They saw some coaching changes. Craig Niver goes to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. They didn't have any other changes outside of that. They bring in Maurice Crum, who's a veteran coach, has done really well with the linebackers.
Yeah.
And then this past year, they see Keenan Hall go to Baylor. They opted not to match and not to give him a title and those things. And you go promote Kyle Cooper, move Kyle Cooper, who's brought in Brashard Smith. That looks like a pretty good move. Absolutely. And like, there's been success for this team, and they haven't had the moment where, all right, it's time to make changes. So, like, I don't know what conversation we're trying to have. Like, this is the first time that there's been like adversity for this team where you need to rip a Band-Aid off and say, all right, you're a guy here, you're a guy there. And at some point in the future of Rhett Lashley's tenure, he's going to have to make a hard decision on a coach here or there too.
Yeah. It seems this week it would be rash and too early to rip the Band-Aid on someone right now. And so that's why I think it's important to see how SMU responds, especially on offense.
Yeah.
But to the point of, will he just pick a starting lineup? Well, when has SMU offense looked at its best? And maybe that's not amazing, but when have they looked at their best? Well, it was at the end of the game against Nevada when they did stick to a lineup. And it was in the middle of the game today when they just stuck with Kevin Jennings at quarterback and kind of thrown Houston Christian out of this conversation.
Yeah.
And so I think to answer the question is they need to. Yeah. Because the sooner they can start to build chemistry with each other, that's when they're going to hit their ceiling as an offense. Maybe it's not as high as we initially thought it would be coming into the season, but they will hit that ceiling sooner if they just stick to a specific plan.
And Whiskey's other question, gut feeling, is this a total rebuild? No, because his defense is playing really well.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there are teams that on paper are going to be better than BYU coming up, and we'll see how the defense adjusts to those. But this is a good defense. I mean, and whenever you can play some defense, you're going to have a chance. And if they can get certain things figured out on offense, they'll be competitive. This isn't a rebuild.
Right. That's why this loss is so disappointing.
Exactly.
Is because the defense played so well, and the loss will take away, and people will forget about how well this defense, and we talked about special teams playing. And so, again, the sooner this offense can figure it out, maybe the light will shine brighter on the defense.
SoCal, what are the overall thoughts on coaching on the offensive side? And can you tell us who you think our three most valuable coaching assets on offense are, including Red as a trio? See, I mean, I don't really know how to answer like some of these questions. Like, I think I'm a big believer of players got to go out and execute. And Kobe Wilson and Kevin Jennings said as much in the press conference. Yeah. And I asked him, I said, what did Rhett, tell you guys? And he said all the coaches immediately took blame. And they said, but we gotta play. We gotta perform. And it's on us too, even when coaches make bad calls and players know it. And players know that stuff. They've got to go out and make plays. It's what they do. And for me, I look at offensively, SMU is in an interesting spot because everybody wanted to go out and get a star wide receiver in the portal, or, well, why didn't they go get a quarterback? Or the offensive line, why is it the way it is? And they went out and tried. And at the end of the day, there are going to be personnel decisions from this offseason that will grade out after the overall season, or maybe, like after that bye week, or, during the bye week after Louisville, like we'll be able to really say, okay, all right, they've got some real issues here and there. But, Rob Likens developed Rashee Rice, and his group hasn't performed to where they should, But at the same time, and this is what people and fans don't understand, all these guys have personal trainers, and all they've got is people in their ear and telling them they should do this and play this way. And so it is such an insane, like the wide receiver position is the most insane position outside of quarterback to try and manage on an entire football team, in my opinion, because you have so many trainers that are in the ear and working with these guys and messing with their fundamentals or what they're trying to do versus what the scheme or the coaches want. And that's not to take away from the ultimate job of the coach at the college is to get them to play the right way. But at a certain point too, you have who you have. And I think that's where SMU might be at wide receiver until a Jordan Hudson or a Romello Brinson shows the flashes more consistently.
Yeah. When we were looking at fall camp, we were trying to make predictions of who we thought this alpha receiver would be. And it was just too hard to tell when they're not going full speed and in pads. And so we've seen now these first few weeks of the season that there hasn't been an answer to that question. And so you've got to look at these 2 weeks as a building opportunity, because it's frustrating that you won't get to see this team get back out there and try and right their wrongs after tonight. But before the season started, fans and college football analysts were intrigued and thought that the way the schedule was set up, you've got these 3 games in a bye, it would benefit SMU. And so, okay, maybe most people thought SMU would be 3-0 heading into this first bye week. But now you've got a chance to regroup. And again, we'll just have to see how this team responds.
And all right, we'll end on this. A couple things from the board. That one, fire Lashley, this whole thing, like, guys, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Rhett Lashley is going to take SMU to the promised land of the ACC. Like, I mean, truthfully, I don't know. I think they have a very strong defensive staff. And I think they have the right personnel, and they will continue to get the right personnel. I think the offense is flipped now in the sense that going into the ACC, maybe they should have been more aggressive with maybe elite talent at the wide receiver position, or they went out and got literally one of the best offensive tackles in the transfer portal. So, I don't know what – and they had a bunch of returning starters, and they trusted a lot of those guys. But I think – and I'm learning this too after we watched fall camp, and last year I thought, okay, defense is going to be much improved, a lot better. And I still thought defense is going to be much improved. Yep. We saw them slow BYU down in the run and just be able to handle this game. But what I think the coaches are learning is they maybe will be recalibrating. And Rhett Lashley said this before the season. They're going to go every bye week and look at their depth chart. And they're going to say, all right, 2025 ACC, is he playing well enough? No, yes. And this is not something you're going to see him come out and say, but they're going to go down the list. And then they're going to be a month, 2 months from now, ready for the portal and say, all right, first of all, SMU loses like a bunch of receivers. They got to go get one from the portal regardless.
Absolutely.
They have 4 high school wide receivers, 2 4-stars coming in. Like, they know what they need to go get, and they're going to learn even more about it. So there's a recalibration of, all right, when Rhett was at Auburn, he knew what a dude looked like.
Yeah.
And at Miami, he had a couple guys that looked like dudes. And SMU still has a couple guys that look like dudes.
Yeah.
But you've got to get so much more of them. And that's why when we were talking about the defensive line in fall camp, I was so high on it. All of them look like dudes. They're all freaks. And by the way, people were low on Elijah Roberts because he was getting doubled, forced a fumble. How many tackles did he have tonight? Like,
yeah, I mean,
he was all around the football. And
3 tackles,
yeah.
2 tackles for loss. But also had, a play where he tripped a guy up and forced a loss.
So I there's so many like knee-jerk reactions to a game like this, and I've covered a lot of them over the years at SMU, with far less upside to a team, with far less expectations for a team.
Right.
And I think people need to understand too that they can lose this game to BYU, and there's a reality that college football is really hard. I mean, look around the country at different games that were won, lost, this, that, and how teams played against certain teams. And there's a reality that SMU is probably going to break through that Power 4 win column at some point.
Yes.
I don't know where that is right now, but look, Florida State and SMU, it might be a 3-0 game. I mean, like, it's true. Like that, and guess what? That puts you in a competitive situation with a chance to win a football game. So I don't know. We've done enough on this. I'm sorry if we didn't get everybody's exact questions answered, but there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions on time to fire them, jettison, NIL is useless, whatever. Like, people on the message board or on Twitter don't really know the NIL structure on some of these things. They don't know what goes into all this and the thinking behind things. So it is a frustrating loss, especially offensively. You can lay this right at the feet of Rhett Lashley in terms of some key decisions, in terms of play calling. They burned too many timeouts, all of those things. But players also have to look at themselves in the mirror, and on offense in particular, and say, what do we want this season to be? Because there's enough out there. And I was texting with Hayden Howerton during the game, and there's enough plays to be made out there. There's a bad showing by the offensive line. There were also times when they had moments for Preston here and there, or Kevin, a good bit of the night, where there are opportunities. And, that those plays have to be made. And there's only so much a coach can do, and there's only so much a coach can do once the roster's set. I mean, PJ Williams, he's got a ton of upside. We're probably going to be talking about holding penalties here and there throughout the season with him, because it's just what he's put on film. So it's a frustrating loss for SMU fans, but they were right there. They just didn't turn red zone trips into touchdowns. And that's, when it comes down to it, the same thing that I've said now for the last 2 years about a Power 5 game. It's a play here, it's a play there. It's Tanner Mordecai's knee being down, not down at Maryland. It's Preston Stone missing Roderick Daniels on the opening drive against Oklahoma. It's Keyshawn Smith dropping a pass against BC. There's plays to be made. And if you want to win at a high level in college football, or even beat quality opponents, you got to make them.
Yeah. I feel like we've pretty much covered every possible way this offense played today, how they're going to improve. So now, unfortunately, it's a waiting game, and it's a 2-week waiting game, and we head in now looking forward to this TCU game in a couple weeks.
I mean, that's the good thing is rivalry games. Anything can happen, and we'll see. Maybe
if there was any time to turn a season around, it would be with your first Power Conference win as head coach for Rhett Lashley being against Sonny Dykes. So the motivation will be there. You just got to wait and see how it'll play out.
Yeah, 4 p.m. Central, September 21st in Ford Stadium. We'll be back to cover it. Appreciate all of you guys who have subscribed to ontheponyexpress.com. Again, check out our friends at Mosquito Shield, moshield.com, code PONYUP. Gets you the best pricing for the remainder of the season. For Dean Ralsky, I'm Billy Embody. You can catch us at ontheponyexpress.com. We're chatting about it all night. SMU Falls, 18-15 to BYU. Thanks for listening to this edition of the After Stangs Show live from Shug's Bagels in Mockingbird Plaza.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU on3 and on Instagram at on3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.